friend is gone, and we gather tonight in this light passage to ease our transition from mourning his death to celebrating his life and reflecting on the great privilege of his friendship. Southern character was aptly named, capturing both the author and the subject of his life's work. Bert was a character, but the title reaches beyond his fondly caricatured absent-mindedness and the sartorial incongruities of his rich tweed jacket, bow tie, and cargo pants. It also denotes that Bert Wyatt Brown was a man of character, of a character perhaps best revealed in the deep reciprocities between the great themes of his writing, honor, grace, and melancholy, the great themes of his life. Bert spent much of his life, most of his life, I think, in the company of accomplished, strong-minded, and outspoken women. His mother, Laura Little, had studied opera in Berlin before her marriage. He was reared by his educated and intellectual grandmother, Eliza Matthews Little, whose firm opinions about everything were influenced by the social gospel. He regarded Margaret Myers, the head mistress of Barenwick, his private grammar school in Tennessee, as one of the most intellectual, dynamic, and large-hearted women in the South. She believed children's learning could be better fostered by creativity and vision than by custom and memory, and she enlivened her school with a combination of rigor, ritual, and artistic activities. And when he married Anne Marbury in 1962, they began an intellectual partnership that lasted the rest of his life. One of the great themes of Bert's writing was, of course, honor. In his Southern Honor and other works, he balanced respect for the genuine virtues of gentility with scorn for the aristocratic pretensions of primal honor. But he was not only a scholar of honor, he was reared on it. He made no pretensions of gentility himself. He simply accepted without question its demand that one respect one's ancestors, anticipate one's posterity with affection, and do one's duty by both. He was born into a prominent Alabama family. His uncle and two older brothers were Episcopal priests, and his father was the Episcopal bishop of central Pennsylvania. Bert felt gentility's pressure to uphold the family reputation by following in their footsteps. At Cambridge, his housemates were gifted poets destined for fame, and again he felt gentility's push to emulate them. Bert was not a self-conscious rebel, but he stubbornly resisted going into the family business or writing poetry. Another important thing running through Bert's scholarship was grace, a term denoting the assurance of divine love and protection. Of all the values held by 19th century Southerners, grace ranks among the most difficult for modern readers. Bert's explication of grace in the shaping of Southern culture is a major corrective to interpretations of the Old South that claim to capture the worldview of the slaveholders without considering the problem of grace. The theme of melancholy also runs through Bert's writing. The bells of melancholy tolled mournfully among Southern writers of the last 2 centuries, he writes in Hearts of Darkness. They tried, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, to counter depression with creativity, and their struggles with the demons of despair tinged the Southern literary tradition with tragedy. In The House of Percy, he chronicles 9 generations of Percys, each plagued with depression, and all but one with suicide. I never perceived in Bert any signs of depression or any crisis of faith, but I know he endured some soul-trying experiences. When he was 8 years old, his father packed his family into a sedan, drove them down to the courthouse, and had their name changed from Brown to Wyatt Brown. The baffled youngster was even more bewildered when he was suddenly expelled from the family bosom without explanation and sent off to live with his grandmother on a mountaintop in Tennessee. It would be more than half a century before he would learn the reason. During Bert's generation, the search for identity was a popular theme among writers and critics, a theme with which he readily identified. He even notes the importance of identity in the first chapter of A Warring Nation. Even if honor was no longer possible with the stigma of bondage, enslaved Africans found other means to assure self-identification, he writes. I spent part of the afternoon in the press booth of the University of Virginia Press reading the page proofs. He had sent me drafts of the various chapters, but I read carefully the new introduction and the summation and the first paragraphs of each chapter, and I think it may well be his very best book. Bert's years in the wilderness were followed by years of loss. His father died when Bert was a sophomore at Sewanee, and his daughter Laura died in childhood. The loss of a child is devastating to any parent. For Bert and Anne to emerge from that ordeal with the grace and good humor they characteristically have displayed could not have been easy, but by that grace they held melancholy at bay. Even in his final days, Bert and Anne exemplified grace in their emails. He would write, "My health is declining far too rapidly, and the oxygen issue is no fun. But I'm still exercising, just came from an athletic class. I don't need oxygen in the water, thank heavens." And he would emphasize that Anne's tremendous health and puts up with all sorts of health issues as they arise. She would follow with a note that he keeps on writing and is cheerful as usual. Even after Bert was confined to a wheelchair, he felt what he called real joy singing in the choir at the Cathedral of the Incarnation. He would write, "I'm not in pain, but breathing gets harder every day." And Anne would add that his priority is to work on the book, doing whatever needs to be done while he still can. Bert epitomized grace in his writing and in his life. His grace was disciplined and severely tried. Bert was one of the deepest thinkers ever to grace our profession. He synthesized cultural polarities, binary oppositions, associated sensibilities, dialectics, and several academic disciplines. In his scholarship and in his life, his research was characterized by exhaustive probing of primary sources. Few historians have plundered more antebellum manuscript collections than Bert, excavating the skeletons of Southern culture. His interdisciplinary analysis was informed by exceptionally wide reading, not only in the historical literature, but in anthropology, psychology, theology, and literary criticism. He revealed the world of his characters as they saw it, even as he understood the causes and consequences of their deeds better than they did. Gifted with both historical consciousness and literary imagination, he endowed endowed his books with an erudition and expressiveness that reached beyond research and analysis to leave us an intellectual legacy of enduring relevance. And beyond that intellectual legacy is our intense personal loss. We already miss Bertram's friendship, his wise counsel, and his unpleasant good humor. But in our hearts and in our memories, they will never